Congratulating my mother-in-law, she threw my gift into the trash can, telling me not to bring out cheap items to embarrass her. I took the gift back and walked away. 30 minutes later, the entire banquet was in chaos. The sound of the emerald bracelet dropping straight into the stainless steel trash can echoed like a sharp slap across the party. My bitter mother-in-law was stunned, and the husband I had devotedly loved was suddenly begging me to slow down. 5 years of my youth ended up being treated like a cheap joke, yet I did not shed a single tear. I calmly bent down to salvage my own dignity and walked away. And exactly 30 minutes later, I personally made a life-altering decision, officially launching an ironclad counterattack that left the entire Thornton family in a state of absolute shock and extreme regret. The atmosphere of the most luxurious restaurant in Chicago's Gold Coast neighborhood was brilliantly illuminated by crystal chandeliers tonight. Warm golden lights poured over tables draped in pristine white silk, where arrangements of imported roses emanated a sweet fragrance. Tonight was the grand banquet celebrating the 60th birthday of my mother-in-law, Eleanor. She wore a vibrant burgundy velvet evening gown, a thick strand of large pearls resting around her neck, sitting perfectly still at the center table like a queen receiving praises from her loyal subjects. Surrounding her were the familiar faces of my husband's relatives. From Uncle Lawrence, my father-in-law's eldest brother, to Aunt Helen, Eleanor's youngest sister. Everyone was dressed to the nines, laughing and talking lively. I stood tucked away in a corner, carefully smoothing out the creases of my simple, tailored pantsuit. In my hands, I held a dark red velvet box containing all my heart, sweat, and tears from the past 6 months. Inside was a vintage emerald and diamond tennis bracelet of breathtaking quality. To afford this gift, I had stayed awake through countless nights, secretly taking on freelance residential architectural drafting jobs after the whole house had fallen asleep. Ever since marrying Arthur, I had accepted stepping back, putting away my honors degree in architecture, and setting aside my grand dreams of urban planning to become a dutiful wife and a homemaker. I naively believed that as long as I sincerely sacrificed, my husband's family would appreciate it. A burst of applause interrupted my thoughts. It was time for the children to present their gifts. Arthur's older brother and his wife stepped forward first. My sister-in-law radiantly handed Eleanor a heavy gold necklace encrusted with diamonds. Eleanor smiled brightly, holding the necklace up to her neck and immediately showing it off to Aunt Helen sitting nearby. Words of flattery and praise echoed endlessly. Arthur nudged my waist with his elbow and lowered his voice, telling me to step up. I took a deep breath, smiled naturally, and walked up to my mother-in-law, respectfully offering the red velvet box with both hands. I spoke clearly and sincerely. "I wish you a refreshing new year of health, Mom. To live a long life with your children and grandchildren. This is a token of our appreciation. This emerald bracelet has a wonderful calming effect, which is very good for your sleep." Eleanor glanced down at the velvet box, and the smile on her lips vanished. She slowly reached out and opened it. The crystal chandelier light hit the emerald, making the green stones sparkle. However, in my mother-in-law's eyes, it seemed like nothing more than a piece of trash. She curled her lip, picked up the bracelet with 2 fingertips, dangled it lightly, and then slammed it hard onto the glass table. The sharp clatter made me flinch. Eleanor raised her voice, deliberately making sure all the surrounding relatives could hear. "What kind of flea market did you go to for this cheap green and red toy? This family might not be old money elite, but we are not lacking to the point where I have to wear this low-grade, worthless junk on my body. Did you bring this thing out here to humiliate my old face and embarrass this family in front of our relatives and guests?" The atmosphere in the banquet hall instantly froze. The laughter and chatter died down, and dozens of eyes fixed on me. There were looks of pity, looks of curiosity, and mostly malicious mockery. Aunt Helen, sitting nearby, let out a sneer and threw out a casual but knife-like comment. "She really is just a girl from a poor background. Her vision is limited to those cheap discount stalls. You went through all this trouble just to make people tired." My face quickly drained of color. I turned to look at Arthur, the husband I had devotedly loved and served for 5 years. I hoped he would say a word of defense, or at least explain the value of the item to his mother. But no, Arthur stared at the floor, actively avoiding my pleading eyes. His hands hung loosely by his sides, cowardly and weak. Seeing her son not reacting, Eleanor pushed even further. She picked up the emerald bracelet, a precious item worth thousands of dollars, and threw it straight into the stainless steel trash can placed in the corner of the room. A sharp clang echoed, and at that exact moment, something snapped inside me. It was not a burst of anger, but a chilling sensation that gave me goosebumps. The water had overflowed the glass. My limit had been reached. I calmly walked over to the corner of the room, bent down, and picked the emerald out of the trash. I pulled a tissue from my purse and carefully wiped every speck of dirt off the stones. Once done, I dropped the velvet box into my handbag. I stood up straight, holding my head high, and looked directly into Eleanor's eyes. I am sorry for ruining your party. Perhaps this gift is not worthy of someone as high class as you. It is reserved only for those who value sincerity. Excuse me. Having said that, I turned around and walked away. The sound of my heels clicked rhythmically against the marble floor, deliberate and resolute. Behind my back, I heard Eleanor's angry voice echoing, and Arthur weakly calling my name, but I never turned my head back. The restaurant doors opened, and I stepped out into the Chicago night, leaving behind 5 years of my youth scrubbing floors in the dark. The autumn wind of Chicago blew across Michigan Avenue, carrying a chilling breath. For the first time in 5 years, I felt the air was crisp and easy to breathe. I walked along the sidewalk under the pale yellow streetlights. The emerald bracelet resting in my purse felt like a witness to a painful but necessary awakening in my life. I took out my phone to check the time. It was 7:30 in the evening. It had only been 30 minutes since I walked out of that suffocating family. 30 minutes for a woman to realize she had to rebuild her life from scratch. I opened my contacts, my finger stopping at a name I had not contacted in a long time. Richard Sterling, CEO of Vanguard Holdings. He was an old mentor who had guided me during my early years in architectural design. 3 days ago, Richard had called me. He earnestly invited me to return to work, offering me the position of Director of Design for the Chicago Riverfront Eco Project. It was a massive development with an investment scale reaching into the billions of dollars, requiring a sharp vision and a deep understanding of local heritage. At that time, I had declined. I used the excuse of being busy taking care of my family and preparing my mother-in-law's birthday banquet to let a burning ambition go dormant. But now, everything was different. I pressed the call button. After 3 rings, the other end picked up. Richard's voice came through, deep and resonant. "Hello, Evelyn. I hope you are calling at this hour to bring me good news," I replied, a radiant smile blending into the night. "Hello, Richard. Are you still holding that project director position for me? If you are, I will be at the office tomorrow morning to accept the job." A hearty laugh echoed from the other end. "I knew you would not be content limiting yourself within the 4 walls of a kitchen forever. The office on the 30th floor has always been waiting for you. This project needs a cool head and a warm heart that loves heritage just like yours. Welcome back to the race, Evelyn." I thanked Richard and hung up. A powerful surge of energy coursed through my veins. The passion that had been fossilized for so long suddenly revived. Sharp architectural lines, zoning blueprints, and urban green spaces danced in my mind. I was no longer the useless daughter-in-law of the Thornton family. I was Evelyn Vance, a female architect who had once won a national design award. I proceeded to open my LinkedIn app and went to my university architecture alumni group. This group was always buzzing with news about bids, projects, and the career advancements of my peers. Tyler, a cousin of Arthur, was also in this group. He worked in design but was just a low-level employee, always bragging and reporting industry news back to Eleanor to help her show off to the relatives. I typed out a brief, clear message without hesitating over a single word. "Hello, everyone. Starting tomorrow, Evelyn will officially take on the position of Director of Design for the Chicago Riverfront Eco Project at Vanguard Holdings. I look forward to having the opportunity to collaborate and connect with all of my industry colleagues soon. I hit send. As soon as the message appeared in the chat, I turned off my cellular data and slipped the phone into my purse. I flagged down a passing taxi. I read the address of Vivi's preschool to the driver. It was time for me to pick up my little girl and take her back to the small apartment in Lincoln Park, which was my personal property before I got married. Tonight, the lives of my daughter and me would turn to a new, brighter, and more thrilling page. While I was waiting for the taxi to take me through the tree-lined streets of Chicago, a literal earthquake was erupting at the luxury restaurant in the Gold Coast. Through the later retelling of my best college friend, I could completely picture the highly tragicomic scene of the Thornton family at that exact moment. The banquet was still proceeding with swirling red wine and Eleanor's smug laughter. She was busy telling Aunt Helen about how unlucky the Thorntons were to end up with such an ignorant daughter-in-law who did not know how to behave in front of her elders. Arthur was sitting still like a ghost, continuously downing glasses of wine to suppress the frustration in his heart. Right at that moment, Tyler, Arthur's cousin, who was sitting at the younger relative's table, felt his phone buzz violently. Tyler opened his app, and the message in the alumni group hit his eyes. Tyler's face lost all its color. He rubbed his eyes, reading the text on the screen over and over again. Vanguard Holdings. Director of Design for the Mega Riverfront Project. He could not believe his eyes. Vanguard Holdings was an absolute giant in real estate. Eleanor's family ran a mid-sized construction supply business that had been struggling for years, begging everywhere, just hoping to get on the subcontractor list for a tiny corner of this project, yet they had received no response. Tyler jumped up, gripping his phone, and ran straight to the center table. Panting heavily, he leaned close to Eleanor's ear. "Aunt Eleanor, something huge has happened." Evelyn. Evelyn was just appointed as the director of the Riverfront Eco Project for Vanguard Holdings. Here is the message she just sent to my architect group. The whole industry is going crazy congratulating her. Eleanor was in the middle of chewing a piece of seafood. Upon hearing that, her fork dropped onto her plate. She stared wide-eyed at Tyler. "What nonsense are you dreaming about? What is that country bumpkin good for other than cooking and sweeping the floor? She must be crazy and making up fake news to show off to the world." Tyler shoved his phone screen right in front of Eleanor and Arthur. "Look at this, everyone. Richard Sterling, the CEO of Vanguard, just officially confirmed the information on the business forum. Evelyn holds full authority over the planning and the selection of materials contractors for this billion-dollar project." Tyler's words were like a bucket of ice water poured over the table. The surrounding relatives went pale. Arthur's sister-in-law, who had just been praised for her gold necklace, now bit her lip, her eyes filled with obvious jealousy and panic. The entire hall buzzed, the noise erupting like a disturbed beehive. Their attitudes took a complete 180-degree turn. From mocking and sneering, they switched to fiercely criticizing Eleanor for going too far with her daughter-in-law. Uncle Lawrence slammed his hand lightly on the table. "How could you be so foolish, Eleanor?" No matter how big or small the gift was, it was the thought that counted. How could you throw it straight into the trash in front of so many people? Now that she holds the power of life and death over that project, our family has lost all hope. Eleanor sat in a daze, her heavily made-up face wrinkling with regret and humiliation. She desperately called out to Arthur. "Arthur, call your wife immediately and tell her to come back here. Apologize to her right now. Tell her I am old and confused. Tell her to bring that bracelet back here, and I will put it on right this second." Arthur frantically pulled out his phone to call, but the only response was the soulless, long beep of the automated voicemail. At the same time, Arthur's screen lit up. A long text message appeared. It was from me. "I have taken Vivi back to the apartment in Lincoln Park. Tomorrow, I will send the divorce papers to the Cook County Courthouse. I am claiming custody of our child and retaining the apartment, which is my premarital asset. I will hire someone to move my belongings later. Do not try to look for me." After reading the message, Arthur slumped down like an uprooted tree. Later that night, After Vivi had fallen into a deep sleep next to me in our old Lincoln Park home, I decided not to wait until the next morning. Work had no time for hesitation. I changed into a sharp light gray business suit, tied my hair neatly back, slung my bag over my shoulder, and drove my compact car straight to the Vanguard Holdings headquarters in the Loop. It was nearly 11 at night, but the 30th floor of the glass skyscraper was still brilliantly lit. People who handle massive projects never differentiate between day and night. I stepped out of the elevator and walked straight down the hallway, lined with plush carpeting. The scent of freshly brewed coffee in the air felt strangely familiar. This was where I belonged, not the greasy kitchen of the Thornton household. I pushed open the door to the large conference room. Inside, Richard Sterling, the chairman of the board, and Tracy, his highly capable assistant, were sitting by the project diorama. Seeing me walk in, Richard's face lit up, a satisfied smile clearly appearing on the wrinkled face of a seasoned business veteran. "You arrived earlier than I expected, Evelyn. I thought you wouldn't come by until tomorrow morning." I pulled out a chair and sat opposite Richard, my demeanor confident and utterly calm. "Time is money. Richard, I have lost 5 years, and I do not want to waste another second. I want to grasp the current status of this riverfront project immediately." Tracy pushed a thick stack of files toward me. She spoke with a friendly tone. "Welcome, Evelyn. Here are the geological surveys and the rough drafts that previous teams worked on." The chairman was not satisfied with any of them because they are too commercialized and rely too heavily on concrete. I flipped through each page, my eyes quickly scanning the numbers and zoning blueprints. 15 minutes passed in absolute silence. I closed the folder, looking up at Richard and Tracy. I began to present the ideas I had harbored for so long. These proposals all fail because they try to turn this section of the Chicago River into a miniature Dubai. That would completely destroy the landscape and strip away the soul of the city. My vision is different. I want to build an eco-city with cultural heritage at its core. We will preserve the historic brick structures along the river, renovating them into cultural experience spaces. The high-end residential towers will be pushed further back, utilizing green architecture with suspended gardens to soften the concrete mass. Sourcing building materials must prioritize environmental sustainability and local origins. I want people buying homes here not just to buy square footage, but to buy into a lifestyle that respects heritage. Richard's eyes sparkled brilliantly. He slapped his hand on the table. "Yes, this is exactly what I have been looking for. A project with deep humanistic value." I knew I chose the right person. I looked straight into Richard's eyes, my voice firm and clear. "To make this a reality, I have one condition. I need full authority over the personnel of the design team. I will personally recruit the best architects, those who understand and love local culture, and I also have the right to veto any materials supplier that does not meet the project's standards, regardless of their connections." Richard burst into a hearty laugh. The gentle little girl from the past has sharpened her edges. "All right, I give you full authority. Tracy, draft the official appointment and authorization documents for Director Vance first thing tomorrow morning." I stood up, shaking Richard's hand firmly, marking the official return of Evelyn Vance to the fierce battlefield of business. Standing before the night breeze of the city, I took a deep breath. The real war was just beginning. The next morning, the soft autumn sunlight filtering through the window of the Lincoln Park apartment gently woke Vivi. The little girl stretched her arms and hugged my neck tightly, a bright smile blooming on her lips. We had a simple breakfast of pancakes and orange juice, a meal so peaceful it felt strange. There was no scrutinizing gaze, no harsh scolding from a mother-in-law. At exactly 8 in the morning, just as I was getting dressed for work, my phone on the table began to vibrate continuously. The screen displayed Arthur's name. I let it ring until the third call, then pressed answer and held it to my ear. Arthur's voice came through, sounding both pleading and on the verge of exploding. "Evelyn, where did you go last night without coming home? What kind of stunt were you pulling at the restaurant? Mom is furious over here. Hurry up and bring Vivi home. Just apologize to Mom, and everything will go back to normal." I smiled bitterly. "Arthur, You are still the same. You always force me to apologize for the mistakes your mother makes. Do you know what I was waiting for yesterday when your mother threw a gift I bought with my blood, sweat, and tears into the trash? I was waiting for you to stand up and protect your wife. But what did you do? You stood there like a coward. There is nothing left to say between us. My divorce papers are finalized. I will mail them to the courthouse today, sign them, and send them back. I have had enough of this nightmare. Evelyn, stop making a scene. You are a big project director now, which brings honor to our family. Mom says she is not mad at you anymore. Mom says if you come back, she will let our family's company supply the steel for your project. Keep the wealth within the family. Being a family is always the best thing. Before I could answer, a FaceTime call came through on my phone from Eleanor's account. Arthur must have been sitting right next to her. I coldly pressed accept. On the screen, Eleanor looked haggard, faking tears in her eyes. She used a sweet tone I had never heard in the past 5 years to address me. Evelyn, my dear daughter-in-law, I misspoke yesterday. I am old and confused. Please don't hold it against me. You are such a big director now. All the relatives are so proud. Just give the materials contract for your project to our company. Keep the wealth within the family, my dear. Bring my granddaughter back here to me. Looking at that fake face on the screen, my disgust peaked. I replied with a freezing tone, enunciating every word. Mrs. Thornton, you should save this performance for someone else. For 5 years, you treated me like a servant and despised my background. You can keep your family's assets to yourselves. Vanguard Holdings project has extremely strict standards. Your family's shady, small-time materials company has 0 chance of getting a foot in the door. From this moment on, I have absolutely no ties to the Thornton family. Do not call me again. After speaking, I hit the end call button. Immediately, I went into my settings and blocked Arthur's number, blocked Eleanor's accounts, and blocked every single phone number of my ex-in-laws saved in my phone. It was a simple action, but it brought an endless sense of liberation. I turned to look at Vivi, who was sitting nervously on the rug. I walked over, pulled my daughter into my arms, and planted a kiss on her forehead. We are going to live very happily, okay? From now on, no one is allowed to hurt us ever again. I grabbed my bag and walked out the door with my daughter. A new day had begun, and the streets were flooded with sunlight. I had officially shed my emotional baggage to walk my own path. No regrets, no looking back. The sunlit construction site was waiting for me, where I would build masterpieces for a lifetime. The afternoon of the next day, since I officially took office, a brilliant sunset cast golden-orange rays through the transparent glass of the Vanguard Holdings building. I stood before the massive window on the 30th floor, looking down at Wacker Drive, bustling with traffic. My mind was busy reorganizing the geological survey items for the riverfront that the technical team had just sent up. Everything was moving at a breakneck pace, but I felt incredibly alert and full of vitality. The pain of outgrowing my past had been processed and deleted, or perhaps it had transformed ever since the night I picked that emerald out of the trash. I gathered my documents, put my laptop in my bag, and took the elevator down to head home. Just as I stepped out of the automatic revolving doors of the building, I stopped in my tracks. Standing under a red-leafed tree by the curb was Arthur. He was wearing his familiar light blue dress shirt, but it was wrinkled, and his hair was unkempt, lacking his usual careful grooming. His face looked exhausted, his eyes bloodshot, and the dark circles under his eyes revealed nights of no sleep. Seeing me walk out, Arthur tossed the cigarette he was smoking onto the ground, crushed it with his shoe, and rushed toward me. Evelyn, there you are. I have been waiting here since morning. The security guards wouldn't let me into the lobby. Arthur's voice was hoarse and thick with desperate exhaustion. I took a step back, maintaining a safe and polite distance. I looked straight into the eyes of the man I used to call my husband, my voice steady, completely devoid of emotion. What are you doing here? I made everything clear in my texts and the divorce papers. We will meet at the courthouse, not at my workplace. Go home. Do not interfere with my busy schedule. Arthur reached out, trying to grab my arm, but I dodged quickly. His hand grasped at empty air and then fell limply to his side. Arthur swallowed hard, his voice trembling. "Evelyn, I am sorry. I am truly sorry. In just a few days without you, the house has grown so cold. I am not used to being without you and Vivi. And Mom is deeply regretful too. Mom said she was wrong to throw your precious gift away. Can you forgive Mom and forgive me just this once? We have lived together for 5 years. We have Vivi. How could you be so heartless to throw everything away over one moment of anger?" Hearing the word heartless, a long, bitter smile stretched across my lips. I crossed my arms over my chest, my eyes sharp as knives drilling into Arthur's exhausted figure. "You call me heartless? Arthur, do you know what I bought that emerald bracelet with? Do you know why it was a flawless vintage piece? For 6 months, after you and your whole family were fast asleep, I had to quietly wake up at midnight. I turned on the smallest desk lamp so as not to disturb your precious sleep. I took on under-the-table drafting jobs for 15 different residential properties. I stayed awake until 3 in the morning, my back aching, my eyes blurry from staring at the computer screen for too long. I saved every single penny of my blood, sweat, and tears. I didn't even buy myself a new shirt, just to scrape together $4,000 to buy that bracelet for your mother on her birthday. I chose an emerald because people say the stone brings peace, helps the elderly sleep well, and wards off illness. I paused for a beat, exhaling to suppress the frustration of the past rushing back, then continued with a strong, steely voice. I offered all my heart, my filial piety, and my health to your mother, and she threw it into the trash can in front of hundreds of staring eyes from your relatives. She trampled on my dignity. And what did you do? The husband I dedicated my life to taking care of. You stood still. You were afraid of upsetting your mother, so you let people humiliate your wife. My heart did not die the moment I walked out. It died during your cowardice. The cold, apathetic nature of your family killed my love a long time ago. That banquet was just the final nail in the coffin. Arthur stood as if struck by lightning. His eyes widened, full of shock and agony. Perhaps until this very minute, he had not truly understood the value of the discarded gift, nor the pain I had endured. He brought both hands to his head, dropping to his knees on the sidewalk, groaning in sheer despair. "I didn't know. I really didn't know you worked so hard. I thought you used our joint savings to buy it. I was wrong, Evelyn. I am a fool. Hit me. Curse me. But please don't leave me." Looking at the man kneeling at my feet, I felt absolutely no pity. The respect and love had drained completely, leaving only emptiness and indifference. "Stand up, Arthur. Don't humiliate yourself in public. I have already sent the divorce papers to the Cook County Courthouse. Next week, the court will call us in for mediation. I hope you will retain the last shred of a man's dignity and sign that paper so we can part ways in the most civilized manner possible. Goodbye, Arthur." I decisively turned my back, walking quickly to my parked car. I opened the door, got in, started the engine, and merged into the heavy rush-hour traffic of Chicago. Through the rearview mirror, I saw Arthur still rooted to the spot, a lonely and defeated shadow. But that was no longer my responsibility. My future lay ahead with my daughter and the blueprints calling my name. On a Thursday morning, the Chicago autumn air was crisp, the sky clear without a single cloud. I asked Richard Sterling for 2 hours off work. Today was the day I had an appointment at the Cook County Courthouse to definitively end my marriage. I chose to wear a simple white dress shirt paired with black trousers, my hair tied up neatly. I wanted to face this event with the most peaceful and dignified mindset, like closing an old book to open a completely new chapter. The courthouse was located on a busy downtown street. I walked through the heavy security doors, stepping into the hallways that bore the marks of time. The distinct smell of paper and polished floors typical of administrative buildings hit my nose. Arthur was already there. He sat numbly on a wooden bench in the corridor, his lifeless eyes staring down at the tiled floor. Sensing my arrival, Arthur quickly stood up, but I only gave him a polite nod and walked straight into the mediation room. The mediator was a woman in her 50s with a kind face and a warm voice. She adjusted the files in front of her, glanced at both of us, and began the standard procedure. You two are still very young, and your daughter is at an age where she needs both a father and a mother. The court always hopes families can reconcile. To maintain a warm home, Evelyn, would you reconsider giving Arthur a chance to correct his mistakes? I sat with my back straight, my hands interlaced and placed neatly on the table. I looked directly at the mediator and replied with an incredibly steady voice. Your Honor, I thought very carefully before filing this petition. This decision is not a momentary impulse, but the result of a long process. I realize there are irreconcilable differences in our life views and mutual respect. I am not asking for a division of marital assets. I only request to keep the apartment in Lincoln Park, which was given to me by my parents before the marriage, and to have primary custody of Vivian. I expect my wishes to be respected, so we can quickly settle our lives. The mediator let out a long sigh and turned to Arthur. And Arthur, what is your stance? Do you agree to Evelyn's demands? Arthur buried his face in his hands, resting on his thighs as they trembled violently. The room was so quiet I could hear the harsh breathing of the man sitting next to me. After a long silence, Arthur slowly raised his head, the corners of his eyes red. I agree, Your Honor. I agree to let Evelyn have custody, and I will pay monthly child support according to the guidelines. That apartment belongs to her, and I have no right to dispute it. I respect her decision. Hearing those words, I felt a wave of relief wash over my body. The proceedings went rather quickly after that. We took turns signing the mediation failure report and agreed to an uncontested divorce. When my blue ink glided across the paper, completing the final signature, an invisible, heavy boulder that had weighed me down for 5 years was completely lifted. Stepping out of the courthouse doors, the brilliant sunlight shone on my face, making me narrow my eyes. Arthur walked a few steps behind me. As I headed toward my car, Arthur called out after me, Evelyn, take good care of Vivi. Can I come pick her up for a little outing this weekend? I turned back to look at Arthur with the peaceful eyes of someone who had weathered the storm. After all, you are her father. I will not stand in the way of your bond with her, but I expect you to be on time and not take her to your mother's house to endure unnecessary toxic remarks. Goodbye, Arthur. I got into my car and closed the door. The engine roared to life. As the car rolled away, I looked in the rearview mirror one last time. The past was truly dead. Ahead of me were wide-open avenues, billion-dollar riverfront blueprints waiting, and a life of complete freedom. 3 weeks since I officially returned to the corporate world, the workload at Vanguard Holdings had settled into a steady rhythm. Today, I was chairing a crucial meeting with the procurement department. Everyone was intensely debating the selection of natural stone suppliers for the Cultural Plaza area. I definitively rejected the proposal to import cheap artificial stone, demanding that the team source premium limestone from Indiana to maintain the authentic spirit of American architectural heritage. In the midst of the heated meeting, my cell phone, placed on the table, lit up. The screen displayed the name of Miss Laura, Vivi's kindergarten teacher. A bad premonition flashed through my mind. I signaled Tracy to temporarily take over the meeting, grabbed my phone, and quickly stepped out into the hallway. Evelyn, please drop your work and come to the school to pick up Vivi right away. She has a high fever. Her temperature is up to 102 degrees. She keeps crying for you, and we tried warm compresses, but the fever won't break. Miss Laura's voice was filled with worry. My heart skipped a beat. Work, billion-dollar projects, or premium limestone all became meaningless in the face of my daughter's danger. I immediately rushed back into the conference room, briefly announced a family emergency, handed all the documents over to Tracy, and sprinted down to the parking garage. Chicago's mid-morning traffic was fairly clear. I pressed the gas pedal, driving as fast as legally permitted, and arrived at the Lincoln Park preschool 15 minutes later. Running straight into the school's clinic, my heart ached when I saw my little girl lying tiredly on a small cot. Her face flushed red with fever, a cooling patch stuck to her forehead. Seeing me, She opened her teary eyes, her mouth trembling as she reached her arms out. "Mommy, my head hurts so much. I want to go home with you." I wrapped my arms around my child's burning body, tears welling up. I gently kissed her cheek, pulling her tiny frame close to my chest. "Mommy is here. I am so sorry I was late. We are going home right now. Thank you, Miss Laura." I carried Vivi to the car and drove straight to our familiar pediatrician near home. The doctor diagnosed a seasonal viral fever, prescribed medication, and instructed me on how to care for her. Back at our small apartment, I carefully sponged her down with warm water, fed her spoonfuls of chicken soup, and gave her the medicine. Over an hour later, Vivi finally fell into a deep sleep, her breathing steadying as her body temperature began to drop. Only then did I have the time to sit on the edge of the bed, massaging my aching neck and shoulders. I picked up my phone to check my work emails and saw a barrage of missed calls and spam text messages from an unknown number. Ever since I blocked all contact from my ex-husband's family, they had started using burner phones to harass me. I opened one message to read. "Evelyn, it's Uncle Lawrence. You blocked my other number, so I am using the company phone to text you. Our business is struggling right now. Since you are the director at Vanguard, pull some strings and give Tyler's company the contract to supply cement for your project. We are all family. Scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. Help the Thornton family out this one time. I will make Eleanor come over and apologize to you in person." Reading those disjointed words, I felt nauseous. Their hypocrisy and greed knew no bounds. When I was suffering, they trampled and despised me. Now that I had power, they were ready to throw away their dignity for profit, even dangling a fake apology from my ex-mother-in-law as bait. Without a second of hesitation, I deleted the message and blocked that number too. I switched my phone to silent and set it on the nightstand. I lay down next to Vivi, wrapping my arm around her small body. The warmth of motherhood was the greatest strength keeping me grounded. I whispered into my sleeping daughter's ear, "Sleep tight, my angel. From now on, we will live our days in absolute peace. There will be no more harsh words, no more fake people haunting us. I will build a new world for you, strong and healthy. I promise." I promise. Time flew by, and the Riverfront Eco-City project entered its foundational design phase, revealing the most formidable competitors. Our Vanguard Holdings was not the only entity eyeing this massive piece of the pie. The most direct and dangerous rival was American Skyline Architecture, a colossal force in the Midwest construction sector. On a Monday morning, I represented Vanguard Holdings at a preliminary master plan presentation at the Chicago Department of Planning and Development. Stepping into the elegant lobby, I immediately bumped into the American Skyline team. Leading their squad was Kenneth, the senior design director. Kenneth was famous in the industry as a ruthless architect, an expert in commercial mega projects wrapped in shiny glass, maximizing retail space for massive profits. He wore a designer suit, his hair slicked back, exuding a smug aura. Right behind Kenneth was a group of young architects. I paused for a second when I recognized familiar faces. It was Hunter and Lauren, two outstanding interns I had wholeheartedly mentored on their graduation projects years ago when I was a design team lead at a smaller firm. Seeing me, the two kids looked embarrassed, looking down and avoiding eye contact, their steps somewhat hesitant. Kenneth noticed me stop. He let out a condescending smirk and deliberately stepped forward to block my path. His voice rang out with heavy sarcasm, meant for everyone around to hear. "Well, hello, Evelyn. Long time no see. Word on the street was you retired to the countryside to dedicate yourself to being a good little housewife. What kind of toxic wind blew you back into this cutthroat business? After years of playing maid, your drafting skills must be completely rusted. If you mix up a structural blueprint with a recipe for pot roast, it's going to be very dangerous for the investors." A few chuckles erupted from Kenneth's entourage. Hunter and Lauren flushed red, gently tugging at Kenneth's jacket as if to suggest he stop, but they did not dare speak up. I stood tall, my gaze sharp as I looked straight into Kenneth's grinning face. I wasn't angry. On the contrary, I felt pity for a man who only measured the value of art by petty, arrogant words. I smiled calmly, my voice crisp and authoritative. "Hello, Kenneth. You are right. I did spend 5 years taking care of a family. But you know what? Those years struggling in a narrow kitchen taught me something that architects who lock themselves in air-conditioned offices all day will never understand. That is the true value of a home. Great architecture is not about erecting soulless concrete blocks to count cash, but creating a living space where people can breathe, connect with nature, and honor the heritage of our ancestors." I took a step forward, closing the distance, utilizing the psychological pressure of a leader. I continued, "I came back here to prove that this land along the Chicago River needs a heart that beats in rhythm with its culture, not a money-printing machine. Let our blueprints do the talking on the presentation table. I declare a fair fight with you, American Skyline." Kenneth's face changed color, his smug smile disappearing, replaced by a dark anger flushing his cheeks. He gave a cold snort, motioned for his team, and walked straight into the conference room. As Hunter and Lauren passed by, I gave them a gentle, encouraging smile. Even on opposing sides, I still hoped my old students would maintain a pure passion for the craft. The commercial battlefield had officially seen its first skirmishes. The storm was gathering, but the steering wheel of the Vanguard ship was in my hands, and I absolutely would not allow any tempest to sink my life's work. The confrontation with Kenneth at the planning department made me realize one thing. Vanguard's current design team was large and hardworking, but they lacked a brilliant individual in the role of a second-in-command, someone with enough stature to translate my soaring ideas into solid technical parameters. We needed someone who thoroughly understood complex structural calculations to execute eco-friendly construction. A name immediately popped into my mind: Preston. Preston was a former colleague from when we first graduated. He was a highly talented structural engineer, straightforward, hot-tempered, and fiercely protective of his professional principles. He would easily quit a job rather than compromise on cutting materials or altering structures to lower costs. Currently, Preston was working for none other than American Skyline Architecture, but I heard through the grapevine that he was being sidelined and suppressed due to disagreements in design philosophy. Late that weekend afternoon, I proactively called Preston and invited him to meet at a quiet, hidden cafe in a historic graystone on Astor Street, shaded by old trees. The dim yellow lights and soft jazz music created a nostalgic atmosphere perfect for catching up. Preston arrived right on time, wearing a faded t-shirt, looking much thinner than I remembered. We greeted each other and ordered 2 hot black coffees. I didn't beat around the bush. "Preston, I didn't invite you here today just to reminisce. I am in charge of Vanguard Holdings' Riverfront Mega Project. I know your current situation at American Skyline is not ideal, and they do not respect the core values you pursue. I want to invite you to be the Deputy Director of Design, my right-hand man on this project." Preston took a sip of his coffee, his eyes revealing surprise mixed with skepticism. He set the cup down and sighed. "Evelyn, I am very happy you escaped the shadow of your in-laws to shine again. You are talented, everyone knows that. But Vanguard Holdings has always been known for being heavily commercial and chasing deadlines. If I go there, won't I just have to face the same pressure to cut costs and compromise on materials like I do now? I am so tired of these corporate political games." I smiled, my eyes locking confidently onto my old colleague. "I understand your hesitation, but this time everything is completely different. Chairman Sterling has given me full authority over personnel and design. This project places local heritage and eco-architecture at its heart. We will preserve historic structures and use green materials. There will be no rushing schedules at the expense of quality, and absolutely no compromises on structural safety. I need a man of integrity like you to guard the safety of the entire process, to ensure these green buildings stand strong for 100 years. I pulled the preliminary draft of the project from my bag and pushed it toward Preston. "Look at this. These are not empty concrete blocks. This is an ecosystem. I have the vision, but I need your practical mind and genius structural calculations to make it a reality. If you agree, your salary and benefits will double what you make now." But more importantly, you will get to practice your craft in the most honorable and proud way possible. Preston picked up the blueprint, his eyes sweeping over the sketched hanging gardens and the natural stone pedestrian walkways along the river. The longer he looked, the more his eyes lit up with the craving of a true builder given a stage to perform. He sat in silence for 15 minutes. Finally, Preston put the blueprint down and looked at me with a refreshing smile. "Evelyn, you've convinced me. This is such a profoundly humanistic plan. If you have the guts to stand in the wind to protect this beauty, then I have no reason to refuse ditching American skyline to jump into the trenches with you. I will submit my resignation on Monday morning." I reached out and firmly grasped Preston's rough hand. "Welcome to the Vanguard Army. We are going to make history together." A perfect puzzle piece had been found. Having Preston by my side was like a tiger growing wings. Vanguard's elite team was ready to face any vicious attacks American skyline was preparing to launch. The Grand War had just reached its most thrilling phase. On a Wednesday morning, the pace of work at Vanguard Holdings was incredibly intense. Preston and I were deeply focused on reviewing the foundation piling system for the plaza area near the river when Tracy burst in. Her usually calm face was now visibly panicked. She practically jogged over to my desk. "Evelyn, I just got a call from Tyler at the city's project management office. He said there is an older woman making a scene in the lobby of the Department of Buildings. She claims to be the mother-in-law of Director Evelyn Vance and is demanding a contract to supply raw materials for her relative's company." I put my pencil down on the blueprint. The storm was attacking aggressively, but I quickly forced myself to keep a cool head. I knew exactly who that woman was. Eleanor had never let go of her greed, and the shamelessness of the Thornton family had truly surpassed my wildest imagination. I turned to Preston, asking him to continue checking the technical specs. Then I told Tracy to immediately contact Attorney Mitchell. Mitchell was the head of the corporate legal department at Vanguard, an extremely sharp man when it came to handling corporate messes. Just 15 minutes later, the company car dropped me and Attorney Mitchell off at the main lobby of the Department of Buildings. From outside the doors, I could already hear Eleanor's familiar, shrill voice. She was wearing a gaudy floral silk outfit, holding a knockoff designer bag, and standing with her hands on her hips, shouting at the receptionist. Standing next to her was Tyler, Arthur's cousin, holding a thick company portfolio. "How do you people work around here? I told you, I am the mother-in-law of Evelyn, the director of Vanguard's Riverfront project. My daughter-in-law holds all the decision-making power for that project. Even if you don't respect me, you have to respect her. Call the department director out here right now to accept my nephew's portfolio. If you don't guarantee this, I will expose your entire contractor list to the public." The receptionist shook his head in frustration, trying to explain that all bidding procedures had to be done transparently through the electronic portal. But Eleanor ignored all explanations, continuing to scream and demand someone with authority. Passers-by began to stop and point. My reputation and Vanguard Holdings' credibility were being dragged through the mud in broad daylight. I marched forward, the sound of my heels echoing sharply against the marble floor. I walked straight up behind Eleanor, my voice cold and echoing through the lobby. "You are mistaken. I do not have a mother-in-law." Eleanor jumped, turning around to see me in a powerful black power suit, accompanied by the imposing presence of a lawyer. Her arrogant demeanor instantly deflated. Her face went from flushed red to pale white. She nervously stepped back, hiding the portfolio behind her back. Eleanor forced a fake smile, stepping forward to try and grab my hand. "Oh, Evelyn, it's you, my dear. I was just taking care of some business for Tyler. Keep the wealth within the family, right? Just say a word to these people here and have them accept his portfolio to make me happy. Whatever issues we have, we can go home and discuss behind closed doors." I dodged her attempt to touch me, my eyes sharp as knives cutting through her cheap hypocrisy. "Mrs. Thornton, your son and I have officially finalized our divorce under the law. There is absolutely no relationship between me and the Thornton family, not even the slightest tie. On what grounds do you come to a government office claiming to be my mother-in-law to pressure them into giving you a project contract? Your actions are not only shameless, but they are an act of defamation against my personal reputation and the credibility of Vanguard Holdings. I turned and nodded to Attorney Mitchell. He stepped forward, pulling a legally stamped document from his briefcase. He spoke with a loud, professional volume, so everyone around could act as witnesses. "Ma'am, I am the legal representative for Miss Evelyn Vance. Based on your fraudulent behavior and spreading false information to defame my client today for personal gain, we demand that you immediately cease all actions utilizing her image and name. If you or any member of the Thornton family continues this behavior, we will officially file a lawsuit against you for defamation and tortious interference causing severe impact on our corporate business operations. Here is the official cease and desist notice." Attorney Mitchell shoved the document in front of Eleanor. She was so terrified her hands trembled too much to take it, her eyes frantically looking for an escape route. Tyler nervously grabbed Eleanor's arm, breathlessly apologizing, and dragged her out of the building. The surrounding crowd began to quiet down, nodding in approval of my decisive resolution. Dealing with extreme entitlement, yielding only gives bad people the upper hand. With this sharp legal strike, I had officially slammed the door on the Thornton family's extortion attempts, sweeping them out of my life forever. After silencing the chaos caused by my ex-in-laws, I poured all my mind and energy into the preliminary design defense presentation. This was a matter of life and death. The defense was held in the VIP hall of the Palmer House Hotel, with an evaluation committee that included top city officials, the biggest developers, and major investor representatives. The atmosphere in the room was incredibly tense. All eyes were fixed on the podium where the two fierce rivals, Vanguard Holdings and American Skyline Architecture, were preparing to play their most strategic cards. Kenneth represented American Skyline and presented first. Just as I expected, he brought an overly commercialized and flashy pseudo-eco design. The LED screens displayed a megacity entirely enveloped in tempered glass and steel structures. Kenneth painted a picture of a dense commercial hub. Massive towers stood tightly packed to maximize retail space. The solution strictly targeted a high return on investment, promising cash flow benefits for investors within just 5 years of operation. Several committee members nodded and took notes, their eyes reflecting satisfaction at the highly attractive financial figures. When Kenneth finished his presentation to the roaring applause of the profit-driven faction, I stood up from my seat. I was wearing an elegant, tailored pantsuit in a soft emerald green, exuding sophistication and a touch of classic American confidence. I stepped up to the podium, smiled at the committee, and did not immediately bombard them with dry numbers. I started my presentation with a story. Distinguished guests. I was born and raised in Chicago. My childhood is tied to running along the banks of Lake Michigan and the river, looking at the historic brick facades glowing in the afternoon sun, breathing in the scent of the fresh water. Our city is developing very fast, but in the process of stretching ourselves to become a modern megacity, we are losing our most precious asset, the soul of our heritage. I clicked the slide advancer, and the massive screen behind me did not show cold glass blocks, but opened up to a breathtakingly beautiful watercolor-style rendering. Vanguard's design proposal came to life. I presented the idea of combining historic, classic Chicago neighborhoods with modern green architecture. Instead of leveling the traditional riverfront structures, I proposed preserving their spatial layout, upgrading the infrastructure to turn the area into pedestrian zones, tech labs, and modern art galleries. The residential high-rises from Vanguard were not towering monoliths. We capped the height at 30 stories, designing them with terraced setbacks inspired by Prairie School architecture to ensure every apartment had natural light and cross-ventilation. We did not use reflective glass that causes light pollution. We utilized reclaimed Chicago common brick, weather-resistant cedar, and traditional terracotta. Every setback featured a miniature garden, creating green facades that would reduce the building's surface temperature by 5 degrees compared to standard concrete. Investors will not just be selling square footage of concrete, we will be selling a lifestyle. The people who come here to buy homes are those yearning for peace amidst the noisy city. They want their children to grow up knowing the beauty of craftsmanship, to appreciate the values of a city with a rich history. The profits may come slower than standard commercial methods, but the real estate value in this area will grow sustainably, multiplying exponentially over the decades. The entire hall fell into absolute silence. The chairman of the evaluation committee, a veteran chief architect with silver hair, pulled down his reading glasses, his eyes gleaming with emotion. He tapped his pen lightly on the table, a proposal that reaches the heart. It awakens a civic pride that we have accidentally forgotten. However, the financial investor faction brought up the harsh reality of the payback period and the cost of maintaining the green landscapes. A fierce debate erupted between the two schools of thought: heritage conservation versus commercial economic development. After nearly 2 hours of closed-door discussions, the chairman returned to the room with a historic decision. American Skyline's proposal brings clear financial benefits. Vanguard's proposal brings profound humanistic value. Both are too sharp in their respective edges. The committee has decided to give both corporations 1 month to finalize their detailed technical designs. We will hold one final public round to choose the sole winner. I stepped down from the podium, meeting Kenneth's fiery, resentful glare. The decisive battle ahead would be a brutal war, but I was completely confident in the path of protecting our cultural identity, which I was the only one to choose. Amidst the busy days of forgetting to eat and sleep to prepare for the final showdown, I still remembered a very important day, Vivi's 6th birthday. On Saturday, I asked to leave the construction office early, stopping by a bakery to buy a Princess Elsa cake that my daughter absolutely loved. I also swung by the flower market to buy a massive bouquet of sunflowers, bringing warm sunlight to decorate our small Lincoln Park apartment. This year, I did not throw a lavish party or invite a massive crowd of relatives like every year when I lived with my in-laws. It was just mother and daughter huddled together in a cozy space. I personally cooked her favorite meals and hung some peach-pink balloons from the ceiling. Vivi wore a sparkly dress and a paper crown, skipping around the living room. Her crisp laughter echoed off the walls. This peaceful scene was a priceless joy that no amount of money could buy. Just then, the doorbell rang. I wiped my hands on an apron and went to open the door. Standing outside was Arthur. He was holding a light brown teddy bear in front of him, and in his other hand, a carefully wrapped gift box. Arthur was dressed neater than the last time I saw him outside my office, but his eyes still held a deep sorrow and lingering regret. "Hi, Evelyn. Today is our daughter's birthday. Is it all right if I come visit for a little bit? I didn't bring anyone else. It's just me." I nodded, opening the door wider for Arthur to step in. After all, he was Vivi's father. I had no right to strip away my daughter's paternal bond. Seeing her dad, Vivi ran over and hugged Arthur's legs. He scooped his daughter up, spinning her around, tears welling up in the corners of his eyes. Watching the father and daughter reunite, I just stood in the corner, maintaining a polite and distant boundary. We sang happy birthday together, watched Vivi make a wish, and blew out the candles. Arthur pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside was a gold necklace with a 4-leaf clover pendant. He put it around his daughter's neck himself, carefully reminding her to always listen to her mother. The birthday dinner proceeded rather quietly. Arthur tried to bring up some old stories, mentioning the memories we used to share, but I tactfully steered the conversation toward Vivi's schooling and health. The past was a closed chapter. I did not want to reopen pages stained with tears. By 8 o'clock, Arthur took the hint and asked to leave. I walked him to the door. Standing in the breezy hallway, Arthur hesitated, looking at me with eyes full of extreme anguish. "Evelyn, you've lost a lot of weight lately. Work must be very stressful, right? Since being away from you, I finally understand that our old house was only warm because of your hands. I live in a house that always feels empty, and Mom is constantly sick with regret. We are truly paying the price for our mistakes. I know saying anything now is useless. I just hope you and Vivi are always safe." I crossed my arms over my chest, my voice calm, carrying no resentment, but also offering absolutely no room for reconciliation. "Thank you for your concern. My work is high pressure, but I get to do what I love and live with my head held high. I feel healthier and happier than ever before. As for your family's matters, I am sorry, but I do not care anymore. From now on, you can come visit your daughter on the agreed weekends and fulfill your child support duties. But I hope you understand our boundaries. You and I are now just two strangers who share a child. Please do not bring your family's miseries here to disrupt the peaceful life my daughter and I have built. Arthur swallowed his bitter regret, turned around, and walked toward the elevator. His long shadow stretched across the cold floor. I closed the door, breathing a sigh of relief. Returning to the living room, I saw my daughter hugging her teddy bear on the sofa, a bright smile still on her lips. I knew I had made the right choice. A birthday without a massive banquet of relatives, but full of permanent peace and love. The race for the Riverfront project entered its final week. The design team at Vanguard Holdings worked at 200% capacity under Preston and my guidance. The most complex structural blueprints specifically for the riverbank soil were undergoing their final revisions. But the business world is never a pink picture lined with roses. It always harbors deadly knives in the dark. On a Wednesday morning, I had just walked into the office when I noticed a suffocating tension. Everyone was huddled around Preston's desk, their faces pale. Tracy saw me approach and handed me a tablet. "Evelyn, look at this article. Someone leaked our structural plans to the press." I took the tablet. A reputable real estate news site was running a glaring red headline: "Doubts over Vanguard's Riverfront mega project. Flawed eco-design poses high risk of collapse, threatening public safety." Below the article were screenshots of a portion of our preliminary technical blueprints. It was accompanied by malicious analysis from an anonymous expert claiming our use of natural materials on soft ground was a fatal error, predicting the green buildings would quickly sink into the Chicago River. The article was being shared rapidly on social media, creating a sensational storm of misinformation. Preston slammed his fist on the desk, furious. "This is the draft of our third version. In this version, we hadn't included the deep drilling reinforcement solution yet. It was just an internal archive file. It's obvious someone on the inside leaked this. An American Skyline bought the smear piece to attack us. They have crossed the line." The phone on my desk rang constantly. It was Chairman Sterling. The shareholders were panicking, and the public was heavily questioning Vanguard's competence. This was a direct strike meant to destroy my reputation right before the final defense. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to keep a cool head. Stay calm. Let the enemy throw mud. I will use that mud to build a fortress. Right now, I need you to ask the IT department to check the entire server access history of the design room over the past 7 days. Preston. Find out who downloaded this third draft. Tracy. Contact the PR department immediately. Announce that tomorrow afternoon we will hold an emergency press conference at the company headquarters. No hiding, no silence. I will face the public head on. During 3 hours of extreme tension, the IT department delivered the results. The account that accessed and downloaded the archived blueprint belonged to Harrison, a young 3D graphics employee who had joined the team 2 months ago. I called Harrison into my private office and closed the door. Initially, he was defensive, his face pale, sweating bullets. But when I presented the digital footprint evidence and informed him that the company would sue him for stealing trade secrets, Harrison broke down. He fell to his knees on the floor and confessed, "Evelyn, I am so sorry. A few days ago, Kenneth's assistant from American Skyline reached out to me. They promised a huge sum of money and a team lead position if I agreed to leak an outdated blueprint with technical flaws. I am desperate for cash to pay for my mother's medical bills back home, so I did it. I didn't expect the consequences to be this severe." Looking at the young employee crying on the floor, I felt more sadness than anger. The temptation of money had blinded a weak-willed person. American Skyline had played an incredibly dangerous game to eliminate their rival. I looked straight at Harrison, my voice steely and uncompromising. "You have filial piety toward your mother, but by doing this, you are kicking over the rice bowls and threatening the livelihoods of hundreds of other people. I will not sue you on one condition. You must cooperate with me to expose the people pulling the strings behind the scenes at tomorrow's press conference. Reclaim your honor as a man." Harrison nodded continuously, promising to tell the whole truth. The stage was set, and I began preparing for a massive counterattack. The enemy tried to drown me with dirty tricks. I would show them the power of the truth and the resilience of a woman who had walked through the fires of hell. At 2 p.m. the next day, the first-floor auditorium of Vanguard Holdings was packed with reporters and investors. Camera flashes blinked continuously the moment I stepped onto the main stage with the executive board. The room buzzed with noise and skepticism. Sharp questions were immediately hurled at me, demanding a reasonable explanation for the flawed design circulating online. I wore an elegant white suit, my hair falling gracefully, displaying the confident demeanor of an executive ready for battle. I remained silent, waiting for the noise to die down before adjusting the microphone. I spoke clearly and resonantly. "Distinguished reporters and investors, before Vanguard Holdings presents anything else, I want to confirm that all information circulating on social media regarding the imminent collapse of our riverfront project is completely false, organized defamation, and a smear campaign." A reporter shouted from the back, interrupting me. "Miss Vance, the images of the blueprint clearly bear the stamp of the Vanguard Design Department. How do you explain the lack of critical structural information in that specific drawing?" I nodded, signaling for the large screen behind me to activate. "Your question is entirely correct. That drawing is indeed ours, but it is only the third draft version that was discarded a month ago because it did not meet load-bearing requirements. To give you complete peace of mind regarding the true quality of the project, today I have invited Professor Townsend from the National Institute of Structural Engineering, a completely independent and top-tier expert in the field." Professor Townsend, a silver-haired man with an authoritative presence, stepped up to the podium. He directly presented our final, completed technical blueprints, with sharp professional analysis and precise scientific data on our deep drilling system combined with a reinforced raft foundation. Professor Townsend confirmed that Vanguard's proposal was not only absolutely safe, but also a breakthrough in engineering on soft riverbank soil, guaranteeing the structure's lifespan for centuries. The endorsement from the industry's leading academic acted like a bucket of ice water, cooling the skepticism of the media. As the hall buzzed with realization, I stepped back to the microphone, my eyes turning icy, sharp, and determined. It was time to flip the board and deliver the finishing blow. We have proven our technical integrity. The question is, why was a discarded draft leaked and posted online right before the final defense? Who is behind this media smear campaign? I clicked the remote, and the large screen displayed bank statement records of an employee named Harrison, showing a massive transfer received from an account under the name of the design director at American Skyline. Following that, an audio recording of the phone call negotiating the terms of stealing the blueprint between the two parties was played. The auditorium erupted in shock. The frantic typing of reporters echoed through the room. I emphasized, "We have sufficient witnesses and evidence that American Skyline Architecture utilized bribery, stole internal documents, and manipulated the media for unfair competition. We are filing an official injunction and sending all files to the Chicago Police Department to initiate a criminal investigation for corporate espionage and corporate defamation." A stunned silence blanketed the room, instantly replaced by a flurry of questions directed at our rivals. I knew for a fact that at this very moment, over at the American Skyline offices, Kenneth and his cronies were sitting on hot coals, drained of all color. My ironclad counterattack not only shattered all malicious rumors but also ripped the mask off our enemy, exposing their deceitful nature to the entire public. The press conference ended with roaring applause. The investors' trust was not only restored but multiplied by Vanguard's professionalism, transparency, and my crisis management skills. I stepped down from the stage, shook Professor Townsend's hand, and thanked everyone. The storm had passed, and the sky was clear again. The path to the final victory for the riverfront eco-city was now wider and brighter than ever. My future was shining just as brilliantly. Following the resounding victory at the press conference, my reputation and Vanguard Holdings' standing were solidified more than ever. The media storm faded, returning me to my intense workdays over blueprints. However, the life of a single mother was never a path strewn with roses. The storms of public opinion sometimes hit from where I least expected. On a Friday morning, while I was reviewing the raw materials budget, I received a call from Miss Laura, Vivi's homeroom teacher. Her voice was incredibly urgent. She reported that Vivi had gotten into a serious altercation with a classmate named Billy. Currently, my little girl was crying uncontrollably and refusing to eat. Hearing this, my heart clenched. I immediately asked Preston to pause our work, grabbed my purse, and drove straight to the preschool. Walking into the principal's office, I saw Vivi sitting curled up on a small sofa. Her eyes were swollen, her cheeks stained with tears, and the collar of her uniform was slightly torn. Sitting opposite her was a woman about my age, dressed flashily, wearing gold bracelets, and speaking loudly. "I am Brenda, Billy's mother. Are you Vivi's mother? Look at how you raise your daughter." She scratched my son's arm until it bled. "The school needs to take disciplinary action. If you let a child who lacks proper parental upbringing study here, it ruins the discipline of the whole class." Billy sat next to her, looking defiant but also a little scared. Hearing that deeply biting and insulting remark, the anger in me spiked, but I instantly forced myself to keep a cool head. I knew my situation made me an easy target for nosy people. I walked over, pulled Vivi into my arms, and gently wiped her tears with a tissue. I turned to Miss Laura, asking her to explain what happened. Miss Laura nervously explained that during recess, Billy, repeating things he heard from adults, had mocked Vivi on the playground, calling her a fatherless child and a kid whose family threw her away. Vivi got angry and talked back, which escalated into a physical scuffle. Billy pushed Vivi down, and Vivi flailed her arms in self-defense, scratching Billy's arm. I turned and looked straight into Brenda's eyes. My face was calm but sharp as a razor. I spoke clearly, not loudly, but with enough force to completely crush the other woman's arrogance. "Hello, Brenda. First, on behalf of Vivi, I apologize to Billy for the scratch on his arm. Children getting scraped is something no parent wants. However, I need you to explain something clearly. Your son is only 6 years old. He cannot naturally know toxic phrases like fatherless child or thrown away. The only way he learned those words is from the adults in your family, people who treat the divorce of others as casual gossip. You indulging your son to insult my daughter's dignity is the most severe lack of upbringing here." Brenda faltered, her face turning red. She tried to save face with a defensive tone. "Don't twist the story around. Kids go to school, hear friends talking nonsense, and copy them. How can I control that? Besides, if your family actually is divorced, then my son just stated a fact. He didn't make anything up." I stepped forward, the commanding aura of a woman who had weathered corporate storms filling the room. A husband and wife getting a divorce is a legal and civilized choice made by adults when they no longer share common ground. It is not a sin. My daughter has an abundance of love from her mother. She has loving grandparents, and she has every right to be proud of her family. I demand that you and your son apologize to my daughter for those emotionally abusive words. If you do not, I will officially file a complaint with the school board and the PTA to address this verbal bullying. My absolute firmness and power made Brenda back down. Under the principal's mediation, she reluctantly forced Billy to mutter an apology to Vivi. I accepted the apology, patted Billy's head, and told him never to say things like that again. After handling the situation, I asked the teacher for the afternoon off and took Vivi out. I took my daughter to Lincoln Park. Under the shade of the ancient oak trees, I bought her a strawberry ice cream cone. We sat on a stone bench by the pond. I pulled my daughter into my lap, pointing up at the white clouds drifting peacefully in the deep blue sky. "Vivi, today you were very brave to protect our family, but I want to teach you something more important than anger. Look at the trees around us. Some have many branches, some only have a straight trunk, but every tree has deep roots digging into the earth to live strongly. Our family is like that too. Other families have moms and dads living together. Our family just has you and me, and occasionally dad comes to visit. But that doesn't mean our home is any less happy than theirs. I gently stroked her soft hair, continuing to confide in her with all my maternal love. You never have to lower your head because of our circumstances. True strength is not using violence to fight back, but using a kind heart and a head held high to live a good life. Whoever laughs at you, it is because they are ignorant. Your job is to study hard, play happily, and grow up to be a passionate young woman. I will always be the strongest fortress protecting you. Vivi looked up at me with her big, round eyes. She wrapped her arms around my neck, resting her head on my shoulder. I understand, Mommy. From now on, if anyone teases me, I won't fight back. I will just tell them I have the best mommy in the whole world. Hearing those words, all the exhaustion inside me melted away entirely. The conflict today did not make us weaker. On the contrary, it forged my daughter a golden armor to face life. I held her tiny hand tightly. We strolled peacefully down the sunlit path, leaving the petty judgments of the world far behind us. Finally, the grueling 1-month preparation period came to an end. Today was Tuesday, the day of the direct confrontation to decide the fate of the Riverfront Eco-City mega project. The venue was the 5-story Grand Exhibition Hall of Chicago City Hall. The atmosphere was incredibly solemn and tense to the max. The evaluation committee consisted of 15 members, headed by the mayor of Chicago, along with department directors and veteran industry experts. Preston, Tracy, and I arrived very early. I chose to wear a minimalist but sharply tailored midnight blue business suit, my hair pinned up neatly, exuding the aura of a commander ready for battle. About 15 minutes later, the American Skyline architecture team walked in. Kenneth still maintained his usual arrogant demeanor, wearing an expensive suit, looking slick from head to toe. However, after the media scandal I had exposed at the press conference, Kenneth's gaze when looking at me was no longer disdainful, but replaced by extreme caution and high alert. At exactly 8 in the morning, the mayor tapped the microphone, opening the ceremony. According to the draw, American Skyline presented first. Kenneth strode up to the state-of-the-art projection system. His design was named Diamond City. As soon as the 3D graphics appeared on the screen, the entire room was dazzled by the extravagance, depicting an architectural complex entirely encased in glass, sparkling under the sunlight. He had designed 5 50-story residential towers right at the water's edge, inspired by diamonds reaching into the sky. Surrounding them was a massive interconnected commercial mall system, indoor entertainment zones, and a private marina for the ultra-wealthy. Kenneth began his presentation with a highly confident voice, continuously throwing out financial statistics that made the listeners' mouths water. Distinguished committee, the Diamond City project will turn this bend of the Chicago River into the busiest commercial hub in the Midwest. We maximize the entire land use matrix, introducing retail interfaces on a continental scale. By building high-density structures, American Skyline will provide the city with a massive budget generated from land use fees and service taxes. The return on investment for secondary investors will hit 30% within just 3 years of operation. This is not just a city, this is a relentless money-printing machine. The financial investor faction and the planning department were clearly impressed. They continually nodded, noting down the massive benefits. A deputy mayor in charge of economics spoke up in praise. Kenneth's proposal is very aligned with the macroeconomic infrastructure development strategy. Attracting direct investment and creating retail revenue from these malls is a huge plus. Kenneth confidently wrapped up his 45-minute presentation amidst the applause of half the hall. I sat below, watching my rival, trying to maintain a winning vision. Anyone would believe that faced with such a towering and dazzling prospect, my idealistic goals of cultural preservation would seem like mere pipe dreams. Preston, sitting next to me, lowered his voice as he adjusted the stack of files on the desk. He uses way too much tempered glass and steel. Building right on the water's edge with such high density will put incredibly dangerous strain on the foundation. not to mention completely blocking the river view for the residential areas further inland. They totally ignored the environmental impact assessment. I sat still, placing a reassuring hand on my brilliant partner's shoulder. Don't worry. We are not entering an arms race of glass-wrapped concrete. We are building a project that beats with the heart of Chicago. The loudspeaker announced Vanguard Holdings. It was time for me to step into the light, carrying the dedication of hundreds of people, carrying the strength of a woman who had personally broken her chains to master her own life. I grabbed my tablet, took a deep breath, puffed out my chest, and walked with firm steps straight to the podium. The life or death battle had officially begun, and I absolutely would not allow myself to fail. I stood at the podium, my eyes sweeping over the faces of the people holding the scales of justice. I did not rush to open my presentation. I let a 10-second silence pass, just enough for the aggressive atmosphere of the previous profit margins to settle. The mayor was waiting. I spoke with a deep, clear voice that echoed across the grand hall. Distinguished leaders, respected expert committee, American Skyline just painted a wildly magnificent vision of a city made of glass and steel. It is a highly sharp commercial proposal, but I would like to ask one question. 10, 20 years from now, when those glass towers are covered in the dust of time, when their massive HVAC systems continuously pump hot air into the environment and drain energy resources, what will our children and grandchildren be proud of? Will we leave them a pale copy of any industrial city in the world, or will we leave them a Chicago deeply imbued with a rich historical identity? I clicked the remote. The massive screen behind me did not show cold glass boxes, but opened to a breathtaking drone video of the current Chicago River. Lush green embankments, historic brick warehouses peeking through the trees. Then, the image transitioned smoothly into a 3D zoning blueprint named the Heritage Riverwalk by Vanguard. Our proposal does not aim to wipe clean every square foot of land to sell. We chose to step back, making room for nature. We are creating a massive ecological buffer zone right by the river, replanting native vegetation to hold the soil, prevent erosion naturally, and create open community spaces. The historic brick structures will not be demolished. They will be structurally upgraded into the cultural heart of the entire project. The residents of this city will live in a complex directly connected to their heritage. I switched to the detailed architectural slides. Vanguard's residential towers do not pierce the sky. We capped the height at 30 stories, utilizing stepped setbacks to ensure every apartment gets natural light and cross-ventilation. The exterior materials do not rely on reflective glass that causes light pollution. We use reclaimed Chicago, common brick, weather-resistant cedar, and traditional terracotta. Every terrace features a miniature garden, creating green facades that reduce the building's surface temperature by 5 degrees compared to standard concrete architecture. Immediately, the director of finance frowned, raising his hand to object. Director Vance, your proposal is very beautiful, very poetic, but what about the economic equation? You are sacrificing too much buildable area for trees and preservation. Your structural security and traditional materials require high construction costs. How can your profit margins compete with Kenneth's Diamond City? Investors do not pour billions in here just to do charity. This is a business. This was exactly the question I had anticipated and waited for. I confidently pulled up the latest market research data synthesized by our technical analysis team. Mr. Director, profit is not just calculated by the number of units sold immediately. We have carefully calculated the long-term economic game. Our approach strictly adheres to ESG standards, environmental, social, and governance. By building an eco-city, we will attract premium clientele, international professionals, and people willing to pay top dollar for a high-quality, pristine living environment. Real estate values at the Heritage Riverwalk will grow steadily at 15 to 20% annually, rather than saturating quickly, like high-density complexes. Furthermore, we will create a stable revenue stream from cultural tourism and high-end artisanal retail chains. That is an endless cash flow across generations. To reinforce the argument, I invited Preston up to present the structural safety elements using the most precise engineering techniques. He proved that our eco-foundation system would ensure absolute geological stability, minimizing future maintenance costs that the glass towers right on the water would inevitably face. The entire room split into two distinct halves. The urban planners, veteran architects, and cultural experts passionately supported Vanguard's proposal. They saw in it sustainable urban development. Conversely, the financial and economic experts leaned heavily toward American Skyline's massive profit margins. A fiery debate erupted right at the committee table, tension rising to the maximum. Both sides presented sharp arguments, neither willing to yield. The fate of the billion-dollar mega-project hung in the balance between two completely opposing development ideologies. The debate among the committee members lasted for 2 hours without reaching a conclusion. The only sound in the suffocating room was the hum of the air conditioning overhead. Kenneth sat with his arms crossed, tapping his foot on the floor, appearing impatient but trying to maintain a sharp, confident face. As for me, my hands gripped the edge of the table, cold sweat pooling in my palms. Every reason, every number, every ounce of dedication I had laid entirely bare. Now, it was up to the wisdom of the leaders. Suddenly, the mayor, who had been sitting quietly listening and taking notes the entire time, raised his hand. The hall immediately fell into absolute silence. All eyes turned to the silver-haired leader, the man who held the final deciding vote on the future face of the city. He slowly took off his reading glasses, folded the documents on his desk, and directed a gentle yet piercing gaze at me. His deep voice boomed, "Director Vance, both proposals have outstanding merits, but I have one final question for you, a question that lies outside the technical blueprints. We all know business is a battlefield, and the ultimate goal of a corporation is always profit. If Vanguard wins this project today, but a year from now, the board of directors or the investment funds apply pressure, forcing you to change the design. If they order you to cut down the trees, fill in the water features, and tear down the historic buildings to construct more commercial concrete blocks to offset rising costs, facing the pressure of the people who pay your salary, facing the threat of being fired, what will you do?" The question was as sharp as a blade, swinging at the fatal weak point of projects that claim to be ecological, but eventually mutate out of greed. The entire hall held its breath. Kenneth smirked to himself, certain that no corporate executive would ever dare publicly declare a rebellion against their own investors. Richard Sterling, sitting in the front row, frowned, looking at me tensely. But to me, this question was not a trap. It was an opportunity to affirm the core values of who I was. I did not answer immediately. I looked straight into the mayor's eyes. I remembered the sleepless nights hunched over drafting tables. I remembered the humiliation when the emerald bracelet was thrown into the trash. And I remembered the promise to live proudly for my little girl. I smiled, a radiant and incredibly confident smile. I spoke clearly into the microphone. "Honorable Mayor, respected committee, I entered the field of architecture not to be a drafting machine bending to the will of money. I am a citizen of Chicago, and I have a responsibility to protect the soul of this land. If that scenario ever happens, I state this clearly and definitively. I will resign from this project. I will personally tear up these blueprints, and I will absolutely never compromise to destroy the heritage of our ancestors. Profits can be made in many places, but the soul of American history, once lost under soulless concrete, cannot be bought back, even with billions of dollars. The integrity of the Heritage Riverwalk is my red line." The hall plunged into silence. My steely, assertive, and fiercely confident words echoed in every corner of the room. The silence lasted for about half a minute. Then, the mayor broke into a satisfied smile. He stood up, bringing his hands together in a loud, crisp clap. Immediately, the cultural experts stood up and joined him. One by one, every member of the committee, even those who had fiercely defended the economic proposal, stood up in applause. The ovation roared like a triumphant anthem. The mayor cleared his throat and officially announced, "This city does not lack flashy towers, but we are sorely lacking people with the heart and vision to preserve our heritage. Director Vance's integrity is the most solid guarantee for the future of this project. On behalf of the committee, I officially announce Vanguard Holdings as the winning developer for the Chicago Riverfront Eco-City. I stood frozen at the podium, tears of absolute joy blurring my vision. Preston, beside himself with happiness, grabbed me in a massive hug, whispering cheers. On the other side, Kenneth went pale, angrily snatched up his documents, and led his team quickly out the door. The death match was over. The light of truth, civic pride, and cultural identity had defeated superficial extravagance. I had done it. 6 months after that historic day at City Hall, the groundbreaking ceremony for the Heritage Riverwalk was held with massive fanfare. On a crisp October morning, the wind blowing off Lake Michigan brought a refreshing chill. The vast construction site spanning hundreds of acres was lined with flags, flowers, and bright red banners. The sound of a marching band echoed, waking up the entire expansive area. I wore a tailored yellow blazer over my clothes and a hard hat bearing the Vanguard Holdings logo, standing radiantly on the VIP stage. Surrounding me were the mayor, Chairman Richard Sterling, Deputy Director of Design Preston, and a host of distinguished guests. As the first ceremonial shovels of dirt were tossed, hundreds of green balloons representing hope were released into the sky. The cheers and applause shook that entire stretch of the river. Looking at the masterpiece of my life beginning to take shape with its very first foundational structures, an indescribable pride swelled in my chest. From far away, outside the iron fences of the construction zone, I caught a fleeting glimpse of a familiar figure. It was Arthur. He had parked his old sedan by the curb, standing under the shadow of an oak tree, his eyes fixed on the stage of glory. Even across the distance of hundreds of yards, I could still feel the crushing defeat and sluggish regret on my ex-husband's face. He was looking at me, a powerful, radiant, and independent woman, surrounded by the respect of giants in the industry. Arthur realized that the distance between us now was not just a piece of divorce paper, but an entire universe of character and worth. He quietly got back into his car, started the engine, and disappeared into the heavy traffic, a completely gray shadow of the past. After the ceremony, Richard Sterling pulled me aside to a private corner. The chairman patted my shoulder, his eyes full of expectation. "Evelyn, you brought home a historic victory for Vanguard. The board of directors has reviewed it, and we want to offer you the highest promotion. I want to appoint you as Executive Vice President of the corporation, in charge of the entire Strategic Investment Division. You deserve to sit in the air-conditioned office on the 30th floor, directing the big picture." I smiled, a warm smile overflowing with gratitude. I respectfully replied, "I am incredibly grateful for your and the board's trust, Richard, but I must respectfully decline this position. The Riverfront project is my brainchild. I want to wear this hard hat and be on this construction site every day to personally supervise every reclaimed brick being laid and every native tree being planted in the soil. I only ask to keep my title as project director until this eco-city officially cuts the grand opening ribbon. Corporate titles can wait, but a masterpiece meant to last a lifetime needs a mother to care for it every single day." Richard burst into a hearty laugh, nodding continuously in agreement. He understood that the fire of artistic passion in me burned brighter than any executive title. That evening after work, I did not drive home right away. I went to the preschool to pick up Vivi. Mother and daughter walked together along the breezy lakefront path, watching the blazing red sun setting over the water. Vivi skipped ahead, plucking little wild grasses and weaving them into a tiny loop. She ran back, stood on her tiptoes, and slid the grass bracelet onto my wrist, giggling. "Mommy, this flower bracelet is prettier than all the bracelets in the world. It's for you." I knelt down, hugging my daughter tightly, taking in the sweet, milky scent of her fine hair. She was absolutely right. This grass bracelet was more beautiful than any precious gemstone or jewel because it was woven with the purest love. I stood up, holding Vivi's tiny hand tightly. Mother and daughter walked proudly down the sunlit path. Ahead of us was a bustling construction site where a city of the future, a symbol of resurrection and resilience, was taking shape. My new life had truly begun, independent, brilliant, and never taking a step backward. All the storms had faded behind us. The future now held nothing but brilliant, blinding light. Dear reader, having followed the tumultuous journey of the character Evelyn, we are surely left with many profound reflections. Perhaps through this story, we realize that blind submission in a family lacking respect never brings happiness. The value of a person does not lie in enduring humiliation, but in the courage to rise up and master one's own life. Furthermore, apathy and greed in how we treat others will inevitably exact a bitter price later. After the storm passes is when the sky is at its brightest, and the reward of peace will always smile upon those who bravely reach out to welcome the light of independence.